it's like who are you talking to? You know, like when people do TikToks or Instagram reels and like they're talking to the camera, but it's like no one's there, so you're just acting like you're talking to somebody, but it's just a conversation with yourself essentially. But like if it's like a conversation with somebody else, it makes more sense.
But I think it matters a lot where you look. See, I look at the eye of the camera.
See, I can't do that because it's hard for me to make eye contact. So I usually look away.
With people in general?
Yeah. Like I usually look away. Like even now, like when I talk, I look away. Like,
why do you think that? Well, when I look at the laptop, in the beginning it was weird because it's like something's looking at me and I don't know where to look. But now I imagine that that's like someone's eye.
That makes it
that
more
I'm talking to.
for
Really?
Me. Yeah.
So eye contact is like.
Yeah.
Wow. Then you really wouldn't like this thing that there's this thing called authentic relating. I went the first time in January, and then basically you sit in front of a stranger cross-legged and like you're just making
it's
you heard of that?
Co-regulation. Like it's also good for like attachment stuff where like you like just look at someone in the eyes for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and like without saying anything. And then people sometimes start crying, like they get very emotional, but it's so uncomfortable. Like I can look at someone while they're talking, but when I talk, like subconsciously my eyes go somewhere else.
I have to be careful not to look too much into, because I feel like I make people uncomfortable because I'm really like,
interesting.
I look a bit too much, and I wonder if that makes people feel uncomfortable.
It makes them uncomfortable.
No.
Okay.
No one's told me that.
Okay.
But I wonder.
Maybe you made them uncomfortable to tell you.
I'm open to being told. And I'll start counting 5 seconds.
Okay.
The 1, 2, okay, look away, Michael. All right, Michael, look away. Yeah. But this thing is called circling. So you don't only look at people in the eyes. Then there's like these things that they take you through where you have to kind of share. I don't know, you start with sensation, like, oh, I'm noticing this. Like, I don't know, like my right foot is itchy. And you share that with the other person. But then you move into different places. Like, when you say that, I notice that the impact that has on me is...
Interesting. It's kind of like therapy.
Really?
Well, I mean, therapy, like we like listen and then like we... Like if you're really in the here and now, you can notice what the client is experiencing. Like, oh, I noticed maybe like you showed this expression when you shared this, or you were smiling while you were sharing something really sad, or even like what you feel. And sometimes that's information where like someone's sharing something and I feel like, oh, like there's my heart sank. Is that? And then people will be like, that's exactly how I felt.
Do you share that with them, like how you feel as their patients are? So you have patients? Or, so as patients are describing to you what they're going through, you sometimes share with them the impact it has on you. Yeah,
and relational psychoanalysis, because people think about like psychoanalysis, for example, as being really detached, which is like, there's so much change that's been done in psychoanalysis, and like there's a lot of like development in it, and it's not just about Freud and being like sleeping on a couch.
Yeah, that's like the idea I had.
That's not psychoanalysis. Like the modern version, that's not how it is. And a lot of it accounts for you as a subjective human being, and like how the relationship dynamic forms in therapy is important. So like it's important for you to share like what impact like a client has on you too, not being like, you know, like in a therapeutic context of like, and then seeing how the client feels about that. So it's like, oh, I noticed, you know, like my heart sank as you shared that. What does that feel like for you, for me to share that?
To hear.
Yeah.
Interesting, because that's exactly like what circling.
Really?
Well, that's part of what I learned that first time in the circling thing.
What is that for, like circle?
I'm not sure. I went to just because it was new like and random. It was weird. And I wanted to see, I wonder what that feels like to look into some stranger's eyes for a long time. And the first one was like a guy who was like, I think he had just gotten back from some ayahuasca trip. Okay. But he was just like, so much joy in him.
Interesting.
And what I learned was how much I felt his joy. And how maybe empathetic or empathic, I'm not sure, but how much we influence someone else feeling a certain way, I feel it too.
It's like an energetic exchange almost.
I felt uplifted after the first little 3 minutes with that dude.
Well, yeah, and then I think that could say a lot about like our unconscious too, right? Like when we go into a room, or even sometimes we sense things about people or start talking about certain things because like energetically or unconsciously we know they have a similar experience, or we can feel maybe their receptiveness to what we share, you know? Like there's no actual data about certain things where it's more an experience or like a feeling that
there's data about what?
Like for example, you going into a room or you meeting this person, there might be like, I mean, you did know that they were on a ayahuasca.
They had told me before.
But you picked up on the energy still without there being like a data point of like, oh, this is what he said to make me happy, or these are the things he did to uplift me. It's more like an energetic, I feel like, exchange, you know?
And it's interesting because with communication, if we think about that, there's so much that isn't verbal. I mean, I forgot what the statistic is. What is it like? I think it's, I forgot, but like a very small portion is verbal, and then everything else is either like gestures, intonation, but then the energetic, which is maybe comes out through those, through the facial expressions, through the intonation. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe even behind all that, there's another kind of more mystical, energetic exchange, which that's hard to talk about. Yeah. I think.
Why is that hard to talk about, do you think?
I think it's hard to talk about because it's like trying to talk about coming down from a mushroom trip. And then trying to explain that. Yeah. It's really hard.
It's like you're in the realm of your spiritual self, and it's hard to like physically describe something that's spiritual.
Because you have to put it into words.
Yes. And it's more of an experience.
What, the mystical thing?
Yeah, it's an experience. Yeah.
I've thought about it like a river, and then we try to like with words, or the words are like the little buckets. But I mean, they can grab something, but they're not going to grab the river.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah.
That makes sense? It's not crazy?
It does. No, it makes sense, yeah. Because I think it's true, yeah.
Do you think the spiritual and the psychological are different realms? Like, or... I mean, because you work in psychology.
Say more about that. Like, how would they be like different in what sense?
Spirituality, I think, contains more of that, what we just talked about, that ineffable quality. And then the way I kind of went into it, there was a certain sense of dissociation. So where maybe a therapist would say you have to work on that, spiritual practices might just have you return to a point in your consciousness where maybe the stuff hasn't been worked out, but you start standing in another place in relation to the psychological stuff. Yeah. Dissociation, maybe.
Yeah,
but
like being kind of disconnected from like your physical world or reality. Well, it's interesting because the program I'm in is very spiritually focused. I mean, it's like a particular religion. They don't really like push the religion on anyone. It's more they just focus on spirituality as part of like healing too, and like how it can be really helpful. Because like I think for a long time, like science and religion and like psychology and religion has had somewhat of a conflicting relationship, I think. Especially with Freud, because Freud wasn't really into religion, whereas Jung, he was
atheist? Freud?
Actually, I don't know. But I know he wasn't a fan of religion. But then Jung was really into spirituality. And I think there's a lot that can be intertwined, and there's a lot of benefits that your psychological self can get from spirituality. And it's necessary, where it's like sometimes, who was it? Was it like Viktor Frankl?
In search of meaning?
Yeah, like I think like a lot of times like people's problems are like a search for purpose or meaning in life, which is related to spirituality, which is related to someone feeling really depressed or, you know, disconnected in their life. So in a way, I think they're very much connected. I don't know if religion and psychology of like you have to be this religion or that religion, but I think some sort of spiritual understanding, even if someone's like an atheist, even like their own understanding of being like connected to nature or their place in the universe or some sort of practice to help them connect to the world outside of them and like their context and their purpose and meaning in life is important. It doesn't have to be like, you know, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. But there is something like that that's important, I think, for our psychological well-being. Because then, I personally think it's hard to like just live your life without, especially the things that happen in life and like going through grief and going through a lot of difficulties and everything, to not have something to center or make meaning out of things. Even if it's just in your meaning making process, I think that's spiritual too, of maybe I went through this to learn this, or I met a person to be able to grow in this way. You know what I mean?
There was a quote that a friend sent me. It's like, it said something, we met through Baha'i, a Baha'i group, and I don't know if you've read some of the writing. I mean, you've heard them.
Yeah,
you've heard them.
Some of them, yeah.
What I like about them is how beautifully written they are. It's poetry, spiritual poetry.
Interesting.
Or I don't know, religious poetry.
Yeah.
But there's one a friend sent me about basically like distilling honey from the suffering.
Oh, you have to share that one. Yeah.
I'll share it with you. And it sounds a little like that. Like from suffering there is in the suffer, like you wouldn't suffer if not for some reason, and maybe that suffering deepens your being in a way.
That's really beautiful, I think.
It's like there's also another idea that I'm thinking, which is about kind of the like when the unbearable happens, the you that thought that was unbearable has to die into another being. And I think that's when you face things that are really you think, oh, I would never be able to deal with that, and then somehow people do.
Yeah. What do you think
they
helps
bear the
people?
unbearable? Huh?
What do you think helps people bear the unbearable? Like,
meaning. If you have meaning, I think there's a reason why. You can find a reason why, right? I mean, that's what Viktor Frankl's book is about. I mean, I don't remember what his why was, but I think he wanted to see his wife again, no?
Yeah, there was something like that, yeah.
And that kept him going through hell.
Yeah.
I mean, through
that's
hell.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about that. Like, then it makes you think you could be almost in any situation, and then if you're able to make some sort of, not that, I think it can come off as invalidating, where to say, oh no, just like make a positive meaning out of it, because it's not that. You like it's suffering, like he was in concentration camps, but to be able to say like, okay, I'm in this circumstance or situation, what can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? What can I improve on? How can I like help myself and others from this? You know, it's like kind of deriving some sort of, I don't know how to word it, but like some sort of learning experience from it, or some sort of interpretation from it that could be empowering or giving comfort to yourself or others. That does, I feel like, alleviate a lot of like the pain in a lot of unbearable situations. Is
that connected, and this is what you have studied a bit, right? Resilience. Which is is there a definition that you've learned of what resilience is?
Actually, let's look it up, because there's different definitions, and actually in my research too there was let's look it up on
The one I've heard is like it's related to your ability to bounce back from tough moments. Yeah, from difficult situations.
The dictionary says ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change.
Easily. Huh.
Yeah. In the research, like it says also kind of something similar of being, it's not that you don't have any reaction to difficulties. Like people can have full-blown like PTSD sort of responses. It's your ability to move back to normal functioning, like a trajectory of normal functioning after like a stressor, trauma, or something's happened to you.
Which could be like a breakup or a death of a loved one.
Yeah. It means you probably do feel like there was a period of like extreme suffering, like there's a lot of difficulties that came from that, and the responses of grief and, you know, traumatic responses and all that could have been there too. But it's your ability to like eventually go towards a trajectory of functioning normally and being able to kind of continue living in a functional sort of way. So that's resilience, which is very typical. People think like resilience is like so rare, and you know, it's actually the more normal response for humans to be resilient.
How does the research look like when you're doing surveys or?
So what I've done, that's why I was like, it's a little bit hard for me I could share parts of my research too, but basically
share whatever you can.
Okay. So my research is on the narratives of trauma and resilience of Iranian women. I get really excited about it.
Cool, let's go there.
And what I've done so far is, first I did a literature review I did a lot of building context, because this is a population that hasn't been researched, because in Iran, there's a lot of censorship, and like women, there's a gender apartheid system that discriminates against women a lot. So there isn't a lot of Iranians here compared to other, you know, ethnicities. So there isn't a whole lot of research for me to build off of. So I feel like to even start, I went into like the history and culture and like how that looked like in the literature from things that are known. I looked at what research has been done on Iranian women. Then I looked at what does trauma look like? What does like the impacts of immigration look like? What does the research say about resilience in general? And then what does the research say about like resilience in different cultures and how that could look like? So that was kind of more like the literature review and what's been done up to this point, and that's like about 50 pages of my research is that. And then I basically interviewed 12 female Iranian mental health practitioners who mostly work with Iranian women, and I asked about their experiences of like trauma and resilience. And then I also asked, but most of it is asking about the work they've done with clients and like themes they've noticed, like things that have helped clients, things with their resilience, and then like things that, like themes of trauma. So right now what I'm doing with my research partner is we're looking at the themes, and we're seeing like what were these therapists saying for themselves and for their clients, sources of resilience for them. And it's interesting because like if you look at different sources of research, like there's some general things about resilience in general of like what helps people be more resilient or what's helped them. But for mine, because of the context, like there's some things that's unique to this population of like these things actually help me.
Like what?
So like education was a source of resilience for both the therapists I interviewed and then also for the clients that they had. And that's not a common source of resilience.
They work with Iranian Americans here in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Not okay.
Yeah, here, yeah. So that, like, so education isn't typically source of resilience, at least like not broadly shown as like, oh, this is a main thing that helps people be resilient. But it was showing like, no, when women were more educated or sought education, they actually felt more empowered. They felt like, they could take care of themselves. They felt like maybe a sense of confidence or something like that. So then it helps them. I'm still in the meaning-making process and all that. So, but it's not for me to but for me to make meaning of it. But I think it's just something like unique that came up, or like something like tolerance, like having high tolerance. It could be because you've gone through, for example, a lot of abuse, or you've gone through a lot of difficulties in life that you have high tolerance, which could be a kind of, they were saying like that this could be, one of the research participants said it could actually be a negative thing, because maybe, for example, you're in situations where other people might be like, oh, whoa, like this is not okay, and you're tolerating. But in other contexts, like because you've seen so many difficulties, your tolerance is higher, so you don't get as like affected.
What, emotionally dysregulated by things? Is that how you?
Or maybe like a patience for things. Like it's like you don't easily like give up. It's like, okay, like this life.
It
has
sucks right now.
Yeah,
but
it's difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
You said you got really passionate about the topic of Iran, right? And what's going on in Iran.
Yeah.
What should people know? Like, let's say like me, I don't really know much. I know you've shared a little bit about censorship and certain people being like artists that have spoken out against. What do you have, a dictatorship or?
It is pretty much a dictatorship. Yeah.
So people who've spoken out, they have imprisoned and then
tortured, killed, executed. Yeah. So after 1979, Iran pretty much had like a religious dictatorship. I mean, if you look at it, they're a republic and like supposedly have these like different branches to the government and stuff, but it's pretty much a dictatorship. It's just and there is extreme gender apartheid. So it's like there's things from like women and men are segregated in a lot of areas. Women have to seek a man's permission for doing certain things, like traveling. There isn't a lot of, so it's, I guess I could go into like a lot of that, but there is a very strict gender apartheid system that discriminates against women and devalues women, both in the societal legal context, but also it translates to how people are treated at home and in schools and in other areas of life. So then there has been a movement Iranian women have been fighting against this, and also other groups too. For example, Baha'is are highly discriminated against in Iran. They're not allowed to be buried in certain graveyards. They're not allowed to go to university in Iran. They're like, it's almost like certain groups are subhuman, and so it really translates to pretty much every area of life, and it's caused this very extreme oppressive systems, from the schools to the legal system to like women aren't allowed to get a divorce. Only a man is, unless they have permission to get a divorce, which a man would have to give her permission. So, or like there is, in certain areas of Iran, there is femicide. So just women, and also like LGBTQ plus individuals who get killed in honor killings in really horrific ways.
What is that? In honor killings?
Like they'll like cut their head off or something, and
in honor.
For honor. And
honor for who?
For like the family, but it's not super common, but it's in certain areas of Iran it has happened, or it's like their custom to do that. If like they find out like someone's gay, or they think a woman is like cheating or something like that, which they could just accuse someone of doing that. And or
it's 2024 and that's
literally
happening.
And so there's so many like details that go into it, of a lot of injustice happening and a lot of silencing and erasure of women in Iran and also in Afghanistan. It's similar too, but Iranian women have been very like active in like protesting in very like peaceful ways, through like removing their hijabs, through just like peaceful acts and things like that. And it's been happening, like they've been doing this since the revolution. And of course there's a lot more details and context that like I'm missing, but last year I think it was kind of like, it's like when you oppress and you keep like telling people shut up, don't talk, don't say anything, and then like it just exploded. It's like all this
pressure, I would say.
Yeah, it's kind of like how with George Floyd, you know, like there's been systemic oppression happening in the United States since, you know, the beginning. But then like that was a point where this wasn't the first time where something like that happened, but people kind of woke up. They're like, oh wait, like this is not okay, and we've had enough. And that happened in Iran with Mahsa Amini, who was a woman who was killed by the morality police.
Morality police.
Oh yeah, in Iran, that's the other thing. There's morality police for mostly women. There's proper ways of behaving when you're outside, and
mostly everything against women.
Mostly, but a lot of men suffer too. So it's like for example, like men aren't allowed to wear shorts, but it's like very like you can't say a lot of things in school or in public. You can't do a lot. So it's this like micromanaging of people's everyday like experiences, and there's a lot of people who've been executed. So many people who've been executed. People tortured in like really horrific ways, or I've had like family members who've been taken by the morality police, and like the way they treat people in like those education centers is just horrific.
What do they do?
From things I'm aware of, and actually I guess I was in one too when I was little, but I don't remember it. But like they like hit, what is it called? They yell, they say degrading things like how you're a slut and all these things. They sexually assault women in those.
The hypocrisy.
It's so hypocrite. The police take the women and then they rape them.
And then they call them sluts.
Yes. And like, for example, they're not allowed to kill a woman who, like a girl who's a virgin, so they rape them and then they kill them. So then they're like, okay, that's okay. Now it's by God, it's okay. It's like so much injustice, but that's the thing. It's like that's the political system and that's a social system, but then that goes into like people's families, and it's like in people's lives in a lot of ways where it's like there's been oppression after oppression, and then it starts showing up in every area of life, and there's like no consequences for anything because there's no justice in the system. In Iran, there actually isn't a lot of justice that happens. It's weird. On one end, it's like micromanaging like people's daily lives, but then on the other end, it's there's like no laws. Like people like steal a whole bunch, like people get away with a lot of like conning other people, but it's like the government has stolen so much money from the people, but then nothing happens in those contexts, but over like someone having like a lock of their hair out.
Like, or even dancing. I think you said that dancing. Wait, dancing
is illegal.
Is illegal.
There's so
men
many
and
stuff.
Women.
Yeah. No, men is not, but women is. But actually, it's just they don't want people to. It's so interesting. They don't want people to be happy in a sense of like there was this guy this year who he worked in like some I think market in Iran, and like he was becoming like a social media personality, and he would like sing, and then people would like clap for him and stuff, and then he got imprisoned because they're like, you shouldn't be like singing and dancing. Oh, singing is illegal for women too. There are so many things that is just like, if I get into the details, it really blows your mind. Like, how is this happening? And then when there's so much poverty in Iran, there's so many problems like substance use, domestic violence, child abuse, all these things happening, and they're like, instead of fixing any of like the economic or other sorts of problems that's happening, they're really focused in on basically oppressing the women and minority groups. So it's a very
Seems like they have something against expression. Like it
Yes.
scares them.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
is there even
100%.
something against like moving your hair or something?
Well,
Or maybe that would be considered dancing. Your hair is dancing, and so you can.
well, I think like even like analyzing that, it's like your hair, I think of as like the symbolism of hair. I think of like your mind, right? Like it's like people not wanting you to use your mind or be free with your mind. If they are from like the education systems in Iran, from a young age, they really try to force religion on pretty much everyone. Children, like I know prayers and things that I don't even know what they mean. But like for example, you have to wear a headscarf and all these things. But it's like for kids that don't even know like what any of this is. It's okay. I'm not saying anything against Islam. Like when people choose that and they want to learn, or their families want them to learn, that's one thing. But when it's both with like a lot of hypocrisy and injustice of like hitting kids in school because their hair is out or something, or saying something that is because of religion inappropriate. So I don't know where I was going with this, but
I'm thinking, you know what I was thinking while you were saying this? I go to Silver Lake a lot. And right there, it's like the opposite. You see people wearing, I saw someone wearing like a pajamas with a pizza all over and like this huge pink fuzzy hat.
yeah,
And
that's
it's
fine.
Yeah, and it's like
That's his choice.
there is that
Yeah,
freedom.
there is that freedom, and
If
like
that person went to Iran,
no,
they would make a day.
no. Yeah, no. It's, I think what you said is really true, because it's a freedom against expression. It's a freedom
Like it's
against...
scary to them that people express themselves, and they need to control
Yes,
because I don't know what's the fear.
because they would lose power if they were like... It's a threat to have people speak or think, because then they can't control them, like you said. They can't keep power.
But then it's like when I express myself like through song or writing, it's almost like I express, right? You press something outward, and if you don't do that, things bottle up.
Yes.
And I think as a society, then it's gonna bottle up. You don't
Exactly.
let people express themselves; it will bottle up. It will explode.
100%.
And it's happening.
That's what's happening. It's
now?
a lot of repression, that like psychologically to socially. Like that's why it's like all this anger is like being repressed. Like, and I mean, last year what happened with Masa Amini, and there people protested a lot. And
Could you tell
okay,
us a little, or tell me a little?
Okay.
I don't know if I should say us or.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So with
Masa Amini.
Masa Amini, she's actually a Kurdish Iranian. So there's a lot of cultural groups in Iran, and she belonged to the Kurdish. She was Kurdish, and they're also discriminated against like a lot of other groups like Baha'is. And she was, I think, in Tehran, which is like the capital of Iran, and she was with her family, and I guess the morality police took her in, and they said that like a lock of her hair or something, like her hair headscarf was inappropriate the way she was wearing it. It wasn't even like she wasn't wearing it, because hijab is mandatory in Iran. You have to wear hijab. So they arrested.
So they said like a lock of hair went out?
Or no, like the way I guess she was wearing her headscarf was inappropriate. I don't know what, like maybe she had a few locks of hair, but she was wearing her hijab. And they arrested her, and then they took her into a van, and they took her to a facility, and there's like footage of that, of them taking to the facility, and she went into a coma afterwards. But then they said that, oh no, like she already had health problems, we didn't do anything. But then when they looked at, she had like some like damage to her brain. So they probably hit her or something in the car, and people started to be like, literally, like, this is enough. Like, the way this has been going on, and I think was the event that really
There's a spark.
It was a spark, and
for all that pressure that was already there.
And that repression became like expression, where people, like women, went in the street. They took off their headscarves. A lot of men were also protesting. Like, people were cutting their hair as a form of protest, and like setting their headscarves on fire. So very like expressive forms of like protest. And a lot of the people who were protesting were like the Gen Z Iranians, especially schoolgirls, but there was also like a lot of society, and most of those people were imprisoned just in the most horrific ways. Men and women like sexually assaulted in prisons, many executed. A lot of people didn't even know where their families were, where they take these people and they just like put them in storages, or places where their families never found them, or they're like, oh yeah, we don't know where your kid is. And they were like, the people who found their children, because the government doesn't want this, they say that they're very like pro-freedom, and like there's a lot of lying and hypocrisy and stuff that comes out. So they try to hide all these things that they've done, where like there was like, for example, a girl, Nika, who protested, and like her story really speaks to me. She was like 16 years old. I mean, there was many people like her. We don't even know how many people.
When did what was her name? Imani?
Masa Amini.
Masa Amini. When did that happen?
It was, I believe, September of 2022. Yeah.
Okay. So recent.
Yeah. And like someone like Nika, I think was like probably a month or two after. And like, for example, she was protesting, and then they kidnapped her. And like the story, they just found out like fully what happened to her. Of like 4 or 5 of the security people took her, basically by hitting her with batons in the head and sexually assaulting her, and threw her in some area in like the desert or something.
And just left her there.
Yeah, and then they found out like, oh shoot, this is gonna get, like, people are gonna find out. So then they take these people, and then the family was after the body, and like even like, where is our kid? Like they didn't even know, and they're like, oh, we don't know. And they went and buried her somewhere like really like in a different city, and the family eventually found out. And then when they saw like her body, it was like completely messed up. And it's like no one knew what happened to her, that nobody suffered consequences, and her family wasn't even allowed to have like when things like this happen, they don't really allow them to have funerals and everything, because or get buried properly, because they don't want the people to gather, and they're like, oh yeah, we didn't do it. And then they said like she committed suicide, that she completed suicide. That's what happened to her. And it's like, and then they say this about every case. Oh, she completed suicide. She had mental problems. She had a health problem. So I think this is the other frustrating thing for a lot of Iranians, was that one, like the government in Iran denies like everything, of like what they've done to people and their families. But then on the other end, like internationally, just because of the things the government has done, like I think Iranian people become very villainized. Because, they're like their government and stuff, where it's like people in Iran are very different than the government. They're pretty much like opposite ends of the spectrum. And then like Iranian people had to work really hard to even get like media coverage about this, because there's no like CNN in Iran, or like there isn't a lot of active like accurate news places in Iran. So it would be like, if people on the ground,
because then they are deemed terrorist organizations or something. Like I'm sure they have a label for them.
Yeah, they wouldn't
then
even
disqualifies them.
Yeah, they wouldn't even be able to fully like be present in Iran. They'd probably be arrested or something. Yeah.
And there's no agenda in the U.S. that, like, it doesn't fit into the U.S.'s agenda in any way to discuss it.
Yeah, but like people on the streets and everything were, even though like what they do, North Korea does this too. They're very much trying to be similar to North Korea, where they shut down the internet so nobody can communicate.
I was going to ask you, how...
The internet's restricted in general, but they shut it down during protests where it's like people can't communicate with the outside world. So there'll be like all these people getting killed on the street and everything, and people aren't able to tell like the world what's happening. Or if people were able to like share videos or content, they go find them and
go if you have to take it.
Okay, yeah.
This is where we cut.
Okay.
God.
Let me send her. One of my friends wants to bring me.
Oh, the one that you said was going to drop something off?
Yeah. She's like wanted to get something for me. It's Pearson Park in Anaheim.
Pearson, yeah.
Anaheim.
EAR.
Okay.
God.
Yeah.
It's hard to like.
I even get heated talking about it. Like,
it's hard to imagine. I'm here so comfy and so enjoying the trees. And and then I get even I don't realize the freedom I'm also enjoying of like being able to sit in front of a camera and with a mic and have internet and just post stuff.
Yeah.
And I start thinking of, damn, all the times I'm thinking about what I don't have, but how I need to be grateful.
Yeah.
So yeah, they control the internet.
Yes.
Definitely. Because that's 100%. Right. That's a tool that.
They both, like, most things are restricted. So like people aren't allowed to go on, like, and the TV and the press, everything is censored and controlled. And then also like what you post or what you say on the phone, all those things are monitored.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Belarus was going through something like that. I had some students.
Oh, Belarus, yeah.
From there, and they told me, like the same moves.
Really?
They do the same. Maybe not. I don't think it's to the same degree, and not discriminating against women to the level in Iran.
Yeah, and in Afghanistan too. Like now, even women aren't even allowed to get an education. The thing is, in Iran, I think what kind of backfired on the government is women are very educated. So it's like when people have their own mind and they think and are like mentally like progressing, but then like society is this messed up and like they don't have opportunities, then it's like what's going on. So I think like my dad was saying, he was like, oh, probably Afghanistan is seeing Iran, how like the women are very bold and very strong and like also very like wise and educated and all these things that they're like, oh, we can't let this happen. So they're also like cutting it off for the women there with
okay. I thought women were getting inspired and emboldened.
I mean, women in Afghanistan too, they have protested and everything too.
Because as much as the government will try to block the internet, there's no way you can block the internet. It gets through. Videos are getting through somehow. Info is getting through.
Some people have VPNs and are able to hack and get through, but of course, like the general public, I mean, a lot of people have like ways to get around it because it's so restricted. People have learned all these like tools. Like when you go to Iran, everyone has a VPN, or everyone has like these satellites that they see things in other countries. And that's the other thing too. It's like, for example, a lot of the women and the girls, a lot of like the people who were protesting, they would see, like they would go on TikTok or they would go on Instagram and be like, there's one of the girls who was killed again with batons hit to her head, who was like, I think 16, Sarina was her name. And she made a video. She was a content creator. And she made a video. She's like, why, basically in general, being like, why is it that other people can go and have these freedoms in their lives? Like, why is kids my age in a different country allowed to just have a normal life? And why because I'm born here, do I have to suffer this much? Like, and I mean, she was killed. But it's like 15, 16 years old, and in the worst ways possible. Again, they said she completed suicide, but it's all, everyone knows it's all made up. But I think that also them seeing like, oh wait, like people in other countries are able to, you know, access this and do this, and like, why for me to even go outside, I have to dress like this, talk like this, be monitored like this, come home, have this happen to me, this happened to me. So then people get frustrated, and they're under so much pressure. That's why the revolt happened too, of like, people are like, I don't care what happens to me anymore. Like, they're at a point where they're like, you want to, you know, execute me? Go ahead.
Because it's like, well, what kind of life are we allowed to live?
You're not living.
If everything is managed.
Yeah.
And looked at. Are they using like cameras? You know, like China has this social, what's it called? The social credit system.
Yes.
Even what do you know, like even in China, even what if you buy beer, the camera knows that it's you.
Wait, really?
And then your points go down. But if you buy stuff that is deemed positive for society, I don't know, diapers, points go up. And then I heard that now they don't even need to see the AI just knows.
Oh my gosh.
Because of the way that you move, it knows that it's you. So, but
that is,
I don't think maybe Iran is not at that level.
I think they're trying
Thankfully.
to be. They've installed cameras and stuff, and they're learning tools from China, but I don't think they're that advanced yet. But they're working on it. Yeah, they're working to be that advanced as China in their monitoring, and they're wanting people to be as cut off as like North Korea. But the issue is like people have in the private sphere remain pretty aware and educated, so then it's hard to control them. So like they're not, like most people are not very religious, so it's like it's hard to control people once they've really developed their own ways of thinking and mind and aren't going to accept things, versus like if they're very cut off from the world and it's like, this is how it is. Like, it's like people never accepted this government as like
imagine someone born in North Korea. How are you even going to know that, I don't know, that the outer world exists? If I think it's like the history begins with I think his name is Kim Il-sung, one of the earliest. I think, right, there was like one, then another, then Kim Jong-un. Now, like the calendar, like you're taught that the calendar begins with.
That's insane.
How will you even? It's so hard to break out of the way that you. I'm exploring this idea of like, how do you discover what you don't know that you don't know, even in the sense of someone who grows up in a certain environment. I don't know, let's take an example. I don't know, I grew up, my parents are from like a small town in Mexico with certain like beliefs and ideas. And
what city?
In Guanajuato, in the state of Guanajuato, in Moroleon. It's a small...
Oh, okay. I have a family member from Mexico too.
Really?
Yeah, my uncle married a woman who's from Mexico, so I was like, oh, maybe
what part?
Guadalajara.
Guadalajara?
Yeah.
Oh, Tapatía. They call people from Guadalajara Tapatíos.
Why? What does that mean?
It's just like, and you know, people from Los Angeles are Angelinos?
Oh, that's what they're... Oh, interesting.
Like that. But like, I grew up and then certain ideas were instilled in me that maybe someone growing up in, I don't know, someone who, I'm thinking Portugal.
Yeah.
With parents who, I don't know, were artists or something. They got taught to see the world in a different way, and that certain things were acceptable and not. And then to kind of take this architecture of seeing the world that is so intrinsic to you that it is invisible, and breaking it. It's so, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, it's hard to break the so like rooted in ways of seeing and see things in another way.
Yeah.
I have access to all the info on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, because it's like, how do you know what you don't know? How do you... But also one of my professors, I think his name is Christopher Bolus. He wrote a book. I have to look it up, but she talks about this concept. It's also like psychoanalytic, of the unthought known. That there's some things that you know, like you haven't thought about it, but like there's something in you knows about it. And then like at some point in your life or experience, you finally get the words or ability to share it, but then it's like you knew it all along, but it wasn't thought out, or it didn't come into full effect until a certain moment. But yeah, it makes me think of that, of like maybe people, for example, in North Korea, on some level, maybe not consciously, but maybe subconsciously, like some people are aware that like, hey, this is not how it should be, you know? But
it might be like a faint little thing that has no reinforcement from society, so you have to really believe.
Yeah, or it's like you don't. Yeah, no reinforcement is a good way to put it. Yeah.
That's where like intuition, following your, validating your intuition would come through.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in? You were born in Iran, or you were born here?
I was born in Iran. Yeah.
And then you came. How old were you when you came?
I was 8.
8. Oh, so you have some memories.
Yeah, and I would go back like frequently. Like every summer, I would go back until I was like 20. For like 3-4 months, I would be in Iran. So.
Do you like it?
I mean, I love Iran.
I mean, I know we just talked about all that, but like, just culturally,
it's
how
so
different
fun
it is.
Being it like outside of all these things. I don't know how people are like so fun. Like you go in the car, because I think everything's prohibited. People find all these like cool and fun ways to have fun. So it's like you're in the car, and for example, like dancing is prohibited, and everyone starts dancing inside the car and like blast music, like me and my cousins, and like people like it's like the food. There's a lot of beautiful spots in Iran. There's a lot of like historical spots because of like, you know, Persian history is pretty extensive, and like there's all these they agree with me. But yeah, like there is a lot of fun in Iran. I think it's like, I mean, you see definitely like people being affected by a lot of things, but it's also like, it's just like there's all these different cities that are known for like really like rather beautiful historical sites or art, or Iran is really known for its poetry, and like the places that are devoted to, for example, like in Shiraz, to Saadi, who is a poet, and like the food. Oh my gosh,
tell me about the food. Yeah.
It's so good in Iran. It's so good. Oh my god.
What dishes?
What's good?
What's good?
Okay, so like the Persian pizzas are so good. It's like very like, I mean, there's some places that have Persian pizzas in America, but it's not like the same as Iran. Or like the street foods, like they put like fries and like cheese, but it's like the way they make it. Or like my mouth is
Testing 1 2 3 4.
People know a lot about America and like how people's lives are in America, and like the way, I don't know, like people live here and the pop culture and everything, but then like here people don't really know much about like the lives of people there.
Or anywhere, I think.
Why do you think that is?
In the US?
Yeah.
I had when I first moved to Mexico, I had this idea. I would say this to everyone, like my little theory, that I kind of grew up thinking that the U.S. was number one. Like, I think that we talked about what gets instilled in people in school and maybe like North Korea, right?
Yeah.
But my experience was Russia's bad. I remember coming out of school, like, just having like
From
an idea
the
that
US.
Russia's bad.
Yeah.
And then that, but also that the U.S. was number one. I don't know. And I think when you think, oh, I'm in like the number, whatever that means, I think you're like, oh, I'm in the best country in the world. So then I don't have to look anywhere else. And then plus so much media. I mean, so much comes out from LA. Well, like so many.
It's elotes?
Yeah.
I love elotes.
Like American movies get exported all over the world. But I mean, if you're from here, then you consume that. It's not really like. I think it's changing now with Netflix and the fact that you can just choose whatever. First it was the ducks, and now it's the elotero man. Elotero man. But yeah, it's. I think that's part of it.
Wait, why
But that's
did you
very,
move to
broad theory.
Mexico?
I wanted to experience life out of where I grew up.
Randomly, like you were. What age were you?
I was 23.
You were like, I want to go somewhere else to live. Okay.
I was gonna go to Barcelona. I wanted to start teaching English.
Okay.
Because I wanted to eventually live in another country. And then I ended up in Moroleon, where my dad grew up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay.
And then I was going to be there for only 3 months, and then I had a flight to Barcelona. I ended up staying there. I got a girlfriend and just stayed there longer. But then I started giving it the meaning that, like, oh, I get to explore my roots and like discover.
Yeah.
It's interesting being back, because now I've had experience in Mexico, and I know in different places, like what it's like in a small town, in like a university town, and then in a bigger city like Guadalajara. Is that recording? Yeah. And it's interesting. I come back here and I've seen this 3 times. Almost every time someone has to mention that they're Mexican, here in LA, I notice that they do it with a little bit of shame.
Really?
Yeah. Like one guy, I was at this music meetup, and people were sharing where they were from, and this guy was like, oh, you know, I'm just Mexican.
I'm just Mexican.
I'm
Not
just Mexican.
Just
but I could see in his face like a little bit of shame, and I had that same shame too.
Why?
Because I don't know. I think I grew up thinking I was less because I was Mexican. I don't know if it's because, you know, here in LA, like most of the people that are working, you know, like are working in certain jobs, or like a lot of the work, right? We have farm workers who would do that really tough. I mean, I've seen videos of them grabbing strawberries, and like they really work hard.
Yeah.
And like these, like, I guess low paid jobs are done by Mexicans, and I don't know if that's part of.
Like there's some shame from that, and also
like,
maybe messages from the culture, like maybe some politicians or racist views from the.
Well, Trump has, you know.
Yeah.
When Mexico sends their people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to feel that shame, but now, no. Yeah. I mean, but I've noticed that as a pattern in other Mexicans, like Mexican Americans like myself. Oh, I'm Mexican, but I can see unless I'm projecting my old shame onto them. No, I don't think so.
Maybe.
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Because a lot of Mexicans I've met are pretty proud to.
Are proud.
Yeah.
Huh.
When I moved here, I moved to a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, mostly Mexicans, and like I kind of grew up with that, and like most of the people I knew were pretty like solid with who they were, or like their families were really prideful about their culture. And I think what made me think like, oh, they're very solid is that also because they were like maybe majority in some places, where it's like, for example, there's a lot more Mexicans in Southern California than, I don't know, somewhere if you're like in, I don't know, Ohio or something. And
Oregon.
Even Oregon.
Montana.
yeah, so I think like it's like, oh yeah, like I'm like everyone, but I felt shame initially when I moved here because I came around like you know, there was a lot of stuff with the Middle East, and I was the only one in, you know, my, so there wasn't like, for example, in the ESL classes, like all my friends who were also Mexican were getting like the more like Spanish ESL, but I never had, or in movies or shows or songs, like I never really had like a representation. So I felt the like, oh wait, nobody's like me, or why am I this way? Versus like for example, you take food from your house, like, but then there's other kids in your school that know, oh, you have tamales, like my mom makes that too. But like for me, what
were you bringing?
Like rice and kebabs or something like that. But it's like, it's very, like, I don't know if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was kind of like that, where people are like, what is that? Where are you from? You know, it's, so there was a lot of like, when you're younger, you're like, oh no, I'm weird and different. Versus it's like, no, it's just I'm in a culture that's like, most people grow up this way, and these are like, they speak this language, and like when you're older you can understand that, but when you're little you internalize.
So what do you think you internalized?
I think, yeah, like I internalized the difference as bad, and I think because I didn't speak English or I didn't know the cultural, like I have stories, I don't know if I want to share it to the extent here, but like there was things where like I felt like super ashamed, where I was like, oh, like I don't know, like especially because in Iran I was very like loved by my extended family, and like I just receive a lot of love from my grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and everything. So it's like when I came in I was like, oh, like I'm maybe weird or I'm different, and like there was like bullying and all this stuff, where I started to really like maybe get more like quiet and go inside myself more, like maybe there's something bad about me. But it was more like I realize now, and I think it's really important when there's that ability to help kids who are especially immigrants to put words into what's happening, of like, especially people who come from where, like if you immigrate from, let's just say France, to like a child that immigrates from France, then not everyone's experience is the same, of course, but might have a different experience generally than a child that immigrates from Afghanistan, because they come from a different context of like, someone from Afghanistan might be coming from an area that's been through war and their family's been traumatized and all these things, and then they're carrying that, and they're coming to this culture that might demonize Middle Easterners, or might be more receptive to like Europeans or other cultures. So I think like now that I've grown up, I've been able to put into words of like, oh, like I really took in like the difference of my environment and my difficulties as like, oh, why am I this way, versus it's like, oh no, like this is more like
you started understanding the context.
Yeah. But I think as a child you don't, because it's like kids, they tend to internalize. They like their parents have problems, they're like, oh, I'm bad. Or like they go through something, they're like, oh no, I did something bad.
I noticed that in me sometimes.
You do like that too?
I'm aware of it now, and I'm curious why we do, like, why do kids internalize? Because they haven't developed the idea that because kids make everything about themselves. Or because I've noticed myself defaulting to, oh, what did I do wrong? Often. If maybe, I don't know, if my brother doesn't, this is actually a true story, like for a while he didn't reply, so I was wondering, like, did I do something? Is he upset at me? I started internalizing even now, and then it takes a while for the logical part to kick in a little faster. I mean, it kicks in, just took a little while. Yeah.
Like, but your like inclination is to say like, oh wait, I did something
wrong. Did I
like,
leave the shoes out somewhere?
Yeah. He's mad at me or something like that. Yeah. There's probably several reasons, but like the two that come to my mind right now is, one is the concept of like primary narcissism, which is in all of us, that when we're young, and like very infancy sort of age, where it's like infants almost think that they have control over, like, oh, I made my mom appear and give me food. I cried. Yes.
And that's how
now it's appear, so it's this level of like, I can get to, like, everything is in relation to me and I have some sort of control over it. And
primary narcissism is called.
It's not the same as being like narcissistic, like a narcissistic personality. It's more like a developmental stage of like being like, you don't have a concept outside of yourself yet, and even throughout like development, that's like you start to develop that of like, oh wait, I'm a different person, and this person's a different person, and they have a different perspective, and so that's one thing that comes to mind. So then, like, if for example a child is neglected, then it might be that they might be like, oh, I'm bad, that's why like food's not appearing, or I don't know how to, like, they start to internalize that. The other thing is like another psychoanalyst I like, Fairbairn, he talked a lot about like children who were abused, and how even like in the worst circumstances they would, I want to say let me get the right quote from him.
Fairbairn.
Fairbairn.
Never heard of Fairbairn. Gabor Mate talks a lot about that kind of, right? I think he's the one who said it's not only what happened to you, but what didn't happen to you. Yes. People think trauma is only what happened to you. Yes.
It is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil.
Is better to say it again?
It is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil. And I think it's like for kids, for example, a kid who is being abused, what will happen usually is like they will think like, oh, it's because I'm bad. And that's more the inclination, because if I'm bad, I can become good. And then this is going to stop happening. It gives you a sense of control. Oh, okay, I'm bad. So you don't think about it to this degree, but it's like, what if I clean my room more, and then my family's going to treat me better, and then you get hope. And that hope keeps you kind of going. And it's easier to internalize that bad than to realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm in an environment that's not safe. I'm around people who aren't good to me. Like, for a child to be at the mercy of their parents who are their world, and see their like this all-powerful sort of figure, especially the younger you are, there's more control that your parents have over you. So then that's going to be really frightening, because then it's like, oh, well, I'm doomed, but versus if you're like, oh, if I'm bad, I'm the bad, then I can do something about it. Like,
so the sense of badness can give you a sense of control.
It helps, and that's a lot of times, that's where like a lot of kids who go through abuse and things like that will like chronically like internalize all the badness of their environment. It's like, you're like, oh, why are you feeling like, you'll see someone's like, oh, I have clients where it's like they're doing all these great things with their lives, and they're very kind and all these things, and it's like, I feel like such a bad person. And it's like, what did you do? And it's like, I don't know. It's just like, it's an internal sense of like, I'm bad. And it's that, oh, it's a lot of bad has been done to you. And instead of seeing it as, oh, these things didn't happen to me, or these things happened to me and really hurt me, and like my family or my friends or my partner failed in this sense or hurt me, it's too overwhelming to go there. So then it's like, okay, so I am the bad one. And that's why they say for depression, which is one of the things most people who are very introjectively depressed, where it's like introject, like you have a
introject within.
Yeah, it's like you're in, like usually the idea is I'm bad. And it's like in psychoanalysis, there's like different types of depression. They talk about one of them is like you have a harsh introject, which means like you have a harsh like inner
Like
voice. Inner critic, and that's a lot of it is an internalized like someone's angry at you or criticizing you all the time, and they say the cure for that is like or where that's coming from is a rage turned inwards. So it was actually anger. So it might have been for like that a child, it might have been a lot of like anger towards their environment, but because it was too dangerous to project that out or say be angry, then it's like, okay, I turn it back, and it's then now I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm this and that, you know. So
and that gives you a sense of control, which is the weird part, no? Or it gives you a sense of like
and hope.
Hope. How?
Because then it's like, well, maybe like if I am good, then people will show up for me. Or if I'm good, then people will treat me because it's like, then it's hopeful. Like my parent, and that's another concept in psychoanalysis where it's like relentless hope, where people get in the same patterns of relationships, hoping that it'll end up different. Where it's like, well, if it's something I can control, and maybe this time I do it this way and this time I do it that way, then the outcome is going to be different. This time my parents will, I don't know, show up to my soccer game, or this time my family will be understanding. And it keeps being like, nope, same thing keeps happening.
But you keep hoping for it and doing the same thing that you learned, unable to break out.
Yeah.
Because that's all you know.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so hard to change. God. Like
to
change. I mean,
pattern.
Yeah, when you're just used to going down the same groove. I'm able now to. One thing I do when I start noticing myself get into those. Actually, I'm out of curiosity. I just check in every now and then. It's like I tune into like what's my inner self-talk, like what's happening. I did it the other day. I was like I was on task. I was actually getting things done, and I'm like, all right, let's tune in. What's happening? And there was a voice that's like, oh yeah, all right, come on, you can do it. Just like keep going. Like just do the next thing. Yeah. When I am in like depressed states. Yeah. I tune in to that voice, and it's incredible. It's what you just said. The introjective. Yeah. It's exactly like that. It's
harsh.
It's vicious.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's vicious. But only recently have I been able to observe it. Like let it. Okay, I listen, and I know now. Like that's you're not me. You are some kind of leftover from the past. Yeah. Yeah. But and then able, not always, but at least I'm able to listen to it without it cutting me. Yeah. Now. Yeah. But it's interesting.
That's great that you were able to get to that point where like you're more of a observant and not like it's not like taking over.
Where it's not happening behind the scenes and like cutting you up without you even knowing it, which is what I think before I started working with a therapist was I had no idea. There's so much I didn't have an idea. I had so many ideas of myself. And then wow, I was wrong about so many ideas that I had about myself.
How do you think therapy changed that for you?
First off, the fact that the first time I called an emotional support line, that's how bad it was. I called an emotional support line where you're like just supposed to share for like 15 minutes what's going on. Have you ever heard of those?
Yeah. Emotional Is it like lines? A crisis line or?
Kind of like, I was really, And so I called, and it felt weird as hell because I was like, oh, I have to talk about me. And I can't do what I normally do, and what I'm really comfortable doing, which is asking questions. Because I wanted so badly in those 15 minutes to like flip it on the person that I called and ask them, oh no, so how are you doing?
I'm just checking in.
But the point of the call is that I get to, so I learned, I'm worthy of being helped. Or like, I'm worthy of help. And also I felt like naked, like, I can't hide.
Yeah.
And then the first time I had therapy, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then now that I've been doing it more often, I mean, I hear myself say things, and I know it's illogical.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sometimes hear my therapist is kind of entering my inner dialogue, but helping me go in other directions. Yeah. And as I go in those other directions, I then notice more things that I didn't notice back then. But I think he does like DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, which is about challenging the thoughts that come up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like, so dialectical behavioral therapy is like dialectic is like holding
Conversation, no?
that, and also holding like the two opposing things. It's like it's this and it's this. It's like accepting the two opposing ideas or views, where it's like I can be hard on myself and I can love myself. Like, you know, it's like it's used. I mean, they use it for a lot of different things, but where it's used a lot is for people with borderline personality. Not saying that, but
We'll see.
That's
if
where
the diagnosis comes out, I'll let you guys know.
No, but that's Marsha Linehan, who came up with it originally. Came up with it for those patients, and then now it's used like more broadly for everyone of different diagnoses. But it's because like for example, someone might be self-harming, or someone might have very like almost black and white sort of ways of looking at things, versus like helping them kind of to center and accept and be in the middle about things. So that's like the general concept, but of course it has elements of mindfulness and like cognitive and Socratic questioning and all those things.
Yeah, they do like something where, I guess, to stop anxiety or to cut it. Like, he's always asking me about like, he used to ask me more about anxiety levels. All right, so when you wake up, what number, 1 through 10?
Oh yeah, they're very like.
And then, we don't want you to get to a 10. So as soon as you notice it. But actually, it did help me catch triggers before they just became like full blown anxiety, which I never. I always thought anxiety, like what is that? Or like panic attacks. I don't know.
Yeah.
But now I know what all of that is.
Yeah, that's good.
But I'm able to catch it now earlier.
Yeah.
So it's been good.
When you can catch it, it helps like to prevent it from getting so bad that like you have to do more work versus like beforehand, like helping yourself before getting to that point.
Before you get to
that point of like
no return, almost.
Yeah.
It's like you lose your whole day.
Yeah.
At least that's how it was for me.
So when it's interesting because like with psychoanalysis, it's different in that like a lot of the CBT, DBT, a lot of the more modern therapies are very much like looking to challenge the thought or do more like structured sort of like, okay, let's put this on which it can be helpful too. But for example, like in psychoanalysis, they would want to get into like the reason and purpose of that anxiety.
Yeah. To me, it feels like DBT that deals with more the surface level.
Yes.
Kind of like helping you steer the car.
Yes. To center, to even be able to do any sort of deeper work. Yeah.
But psychoanalysis goes deeper.
It's very deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I also like therapies like IFS, like internal family systems. That one's really interesting too. Yeah.
What maybe this will be the last question, and we'll see where this goes. And then, but like working with your patients, have you learned stuff just from hearing what patients go through? Then when you reflect on your own life, like maybe
100%. Yeah, I don't know how you could not.
Yeah, how could you not?
Like
easy question.
100%. Like I learn about people, I learn about my life. It makes me reflect on my own life. There's times I've seen clients and I'm like, there's things that they've learned that help. Like it's like people come to their own insights where I'm like, well, no, that's really interesting. And I also like take it in. But it's, I don't know, like, I think to be a therapist, you have to let yourself get, like a good therapist, you have to let yourself be affected by the person. Of course, you don't want it to be to the level of like, you know, like you're not able to center or something like that, but like more like oh, like really take in this person's experience. So I think I've definitely like learned.
People feel it, right? I can tell. Actually, I've experimented with a few therapists.
How?
Well, like there's a platform called Therapify.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to do it in Spanish.
Okay.
I want my Portuguese to get good enough where I could even do therapy in Portuguese.
Oh, okay.
But I had a therapist who I could tell they were just going through the motions of doing the therapy thing, which, I mean, I guess if you have a lot of clients, you're human too, and you have to get by.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like flip it around on her as well, and like,
what?
how are you? Like, I could see in your eyes that you're a little bit sad. What's going on?
Oh my!
I should be a therapist.
You should. You should be a therapist.
But it did take away a little of me wanting to share so much, because I kind of knew like they weren't really there. But I just said, all right, I'm gonna look at the try to get as much from this time as possible.
Yeah,
And
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Where they're so loud.
hey, duck. Who are they talking to?
I think they want the food.
They can be aggressive. The
I know,
ducks.
I've heard.
Yeah. I've seen them attack people.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm the same way. Like if someone's not, like if I'm seeing a therapist and I feel like they're not tearing up or something, like I'm like, that's why, like, I think the clients I work with, like, I really do get affected by their stories. And, like, it's good to work with people you connect with, because then you can, like, they have an impact on you and you have an impact on them. And it's, like, more meaningful, I think. Yeah.
The one that I've been working with, he's not like a good listener. He just challenges all my thoughts.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I'm like, I'll take the help I can get, like whatever. Challenge my thoughts. Yeah. Although I wonder what it'd be like to like have one that listens, truly listens. I did that with my brother. We had little sessions where we would take turns. Like, all right, Tony, 30 minutes. I'll just ask you questions to allow you to explore. And we had some moments where like he was crying.
Really?
Yeah. And
interesting. That's so interesting.
And it felt like, oh my God, like we let go of some stuff. So that was interesting. He's a really good listener, my brother, for the most part. And me too, for the most part. Yeah. But yeah.
I think, personally, I think what's helped me when I've explored things, actually, one of the things that really helped me was like, to learn about what kind of a therapist I want to be too, is like in my own psychoanalytic sequence. I have a professor who, she's one of the members for my research too, and we do this thing of like, you go up in front of the class and she basically does psychoanalysis therapy on you. So, but you just authentically share
in front of people.
Yeah, but I went in the
I'm
class.
comfortable with that.
And it was a very intense experience for me. But the way I think she would listen and care, it like, I feel like it healed like a portion of like my pain, where I think, and I realized like, oh wow, like a lot of times people just really want to know someone like cares and understands and witnesses their suffering or pain, or is not alone in that, and it does something to you. I feel like the best moments that you, like, even as therapists that we're learning, or I've been research assistant or teaching assistant for my professors, like I'll do discussions for classes and stuff, and like when we talk about it, people are like, okay, I'm going to use this intervention and this intervention. And at the core, like when you really talk to people and like explore like what, or even think about your own therapy, like the moment that was really vital or helped or something wasn't an intervention. It's more like someone was there with you and they really saw you and they really like cared or provided some sort of like safety and understanding, and it was really authentic and genuine, and like it was almost like they were human with you. And saw you in like your most vulnerable place and still like held that love and unconditional care for you. And like
Wow.
that's so powerful. I mean, it's very healing, and that's a lot of what relational psychoanalysis is.
But that's a responsibility. Like that, how can a therapist provide that if they don't provide that to themselves? Is what I'm thinking. Like that entails, right, a lot of inner work on the therapist as well.
Yeah.
To provide that space.
It does.
I'm saying that because I'm just thinking of in the past how I wasn't very compassionate to myself, and I'm thinking now of moments when I had people be vulnerable, and I'm thinking of how I responded. Oh my God. Yeah, and it wasn't that. I thought I was trying to help, but I wasn't that compassionate. Like sometimes people just wanted to share and like have the space to share.
Yeah.
And be seen in that.
Yeah. And it was hard for you to do that.
Yeah, and then I realized, oh, I don't do that with myself.
Yeah. So
Like,
you being
I thought compassion was weak.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought it was weak. Like, I was afraid of it because I thought, oh, it means I'm just going to stay in the same place. And I think I found comfort in self-abuse.
Yeah. So, in a way, it gave you control.
It gave me, and I'm seeing,
Yeah,
it was like, oh, that's what I knew. That's where I went for control. But yeah, what were you going to say?
No, I mean, there's wisdom in that. And I thought about that too. It's like, for example, in our programs, like there's people that go through all sorts of their own stuff. Like psychologists aren't perfect people. And a lot of times it's people who've gone through difficulties who also want to help people, you know, but whether it's myself or people in like the programs I've been in where it's like some people didn't really want to like reflect or even in myself, I'm like, oh wait, I've had these experiences. How can I show up for someone else when I'm also navigating these experiences by myself or for myself? And I think like, it doesn't mean you have to be like this perfect epitome of a person to be that way. Like you can still show up as long as you have, I think some core qualities are necessary in therapy. Like no way around it. One is like self-reflection and being able to like really reflect on yourself and also other people of like, oh, this is the impact I have on other people. This is how I can shift and taking in that, like the feedback and like wanting to grow. But like empathy is a main core thing that you have to have. I don't know like why people go in this field if like they don't, you know, it's like you need to have empathy. And curiosity of like just exploring, like I want to like learn about people and explore. So those are really core traits that are important, and being like authentic and everything. But I think like when you deepen that empathy for yourself, whether it's your own like reflection experiences and therapy and everything, but a lot of times it's the empathy you experience from other people too, then you can show up in a deep way for other people, where it's like I've noticed the more work I've done on myself, like maybe before I was able to show up and be empathic, but like the more I've worked on myself and I've received that compassion and been vulnerable and gotten support and care from other people, then it's like it's an overflow that I want to be able to, like when someone shares, it's like there's something more, there's more depth in the empathy I'm able to provide versus maybe being like, yeah, like, you know, kind of, I think there's degrees to it, you know, like it's not like you have it or don't, but like usually like maybe you're at like 10% or 20% or maybe you're at 80%, you know. So I think that you're right, like the more you're able to kind of experience that from other people and for yourself, then like you can offer that to other people, you know.
Just like a space that you create in yourself.
Yeah.
That then you can. I think that's what Ram Dass says a lot. It's like all we ever really have to offer to another being. I think he goes sometimes too much. Ram Dass, he was my teen guru for a while.
Oh.
Maybe up until like 2 years ago. He was a psychologist, Harvard professor. He taught like Freud and Jung, and he tells this whole story about like feeling like he was almost like he was doing a good job of being a psychology professor, and the students were doing good jobs of being psychology students, but like nothing was really happening. It was almost as if behind a glass. And so he went off to he started experimenting with psychedelics. Have you ever heard of a man named Timothy Leary?
No.
Have you ever heard of the phrase tune in, drop out, or tune in and drop out or something? It was like him and Timothy Leary were responsible for like the psychedelic revolution. I don't want to say them two only, but I had a big part to play in that revolution in the 1960s. He started experimenting with psychedelics in students and eventually got kicked out of Harvard and went to India, and he said, treat me as data from here on out, because as scientists you're supposed to be detached from what you're studying, and he's like, I'm just gonna jump in and later other scientists can use me as data for what happens to him who just went. But he's the one that said that all we ever really have to offer is our being.
Yeah.
But it's so
totally
hard
agree.
to like grab being.
Yeah.
Especially when we are evaluated so much by what we do. I mean, I'm in like, I need to do more. All right, enough being. I want to do more.
Yeah.
I've been all about being. But I feel like I need to do more. But yeah.
That's what my professor says a lot, like the psychoanalytic professor that I was talking about. She talks about that, where like when people are like, okay, what interventions, what thing do we need to use? And a lot of times she says it's like your presence. That's the intervention, like really showing up in a authentic and empathic way. That is the intervention. That's better than a lot of
Really?
Like analytically,
That's
like
crazy.
being very present in the here and now, and really like attuning to someone's experience of moment to moment of like, oh, like how are you feeling in this moment? Oh, I noticed like your eyes went over there. What's going on? When you said this, there's like being so attuned to someone. A lot of people have not had that. Like, especially, that's like a very early state that a lot of people have missed, of like a baby needing attunement from their mother. Like, you need to be able to know, like, oh, he's crying, he's hungry, he is, in pain. Like, if like those early things were not met, like people might have trouble even like identifying, I'm feeling sad right now. If I don't even know what my hunger, and we learn to regulate and identify things in ourselves by the way people have attuned to us. But like, what if you haven't had, what if you've gone through neglect or other things? Like, you haven't had any attunement. You're not gonna be like, oh wait, what am I even like, I'm crying, but I don't know why, or because you haven't had that presence to even help you identify of your both physical state and your emotional state, of even naming it.
So someone else's attunement can help you identify your, like if you had gotten that as a child, it would have helped you identify your own emotion.
Yeah.
Because how do we learn? And through what process do we learn? Oh, this thing that I feel, let's call it something.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you're crying, maybe you're sad. I mean, you kind of learn, but I guess we learn it. If we don't have someone there to teach us, we just learn it by watching stuff from media
or even how our parents interact with their emotions. It's like, oh, my dad, when he's sad, like he gets quiet or something. And it's like, oh, I'm sad. If you're modeling your behavior after that, it's like, oh, I get quiet. Like, that's how people are when they're sad, So it's like you learn emotion. I mean, we all experience emotion, but I think you interpret it based on a social context, right? It's like you can, and you experience a lot of them in a social context too. Like you get, so you
learn how to deal with it also.
Yeah.
From what you saw around you.
Yeah.
So attunement is this. There's what's his name? There's a guy. There's just some guy.
Yeah.
Psychologist guy, whose name I forget. But he wrote a book called Attachment Disturbances.
Interesting.
Have you heard of that?
No.
And I did this like set of meetings for a month where we learned a little bit about in this we learned, or the guy was teaching us that kind of there were like these 5 and this guy who ran this workshop for a month learned directly from this guy whose name I'm forgetting. God, what's his name? I'm forgetting. But he identified like 5 things that we should have gotten as children. Like one of them was attunement. Another was delight, reflected delight.
Like, say more about that.
Yeah, so a sense of someone enjoying you for you.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. And encouragement, encouraged development was the third. I always forget one. So
what's say more about the encouraged development?
Encouraged development. Someone, it's connected to exploration. Like someone.
Oh, like your
pushing you a little
independence.
to explore.
Oh, okay.
Go.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
you can do it, right? Like.
Oh, okay.
The fourth, safety, actually a very basic one. And I always forget one. So the fifth, let's see if today I forget. Let's see if today I remember. So what did I say? Attunement, reflect delight, safety, encourage development, and no, I forgot. There's another one.
Okay.
And yeah, I was wondering if have you heard of anything about that?
No, but that's really, I would be curious if you could send the book or that part of it.
But I did the way this guy came up with this method where you kind of imagine it's a meditation that guides you. It's a guided meditation in which you imagine your parents that are suited to your needs.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, and I've done it. And when I did some tapes,
definitely send it to me.
I'll send you the tapes. Some that were focused on like delight, on getting experiencing delight. The first few times I did it,
you cried.
It felt like it was so powerful. It was so powerful. It felt like a void I didn't even know existed. Suddenly had a life again for that moment. Like it was cathartic.
That's so beautiful.
Also the attunement, all of them. And it was amazing. And that's when I really thought of what Gabor Mate says, of trauma is not only what happened to you, but what doesn't happen to you.
Yeah.
Because holy crap, that felt so... And I'm only imagining it. And it felt so fulfilling.
Yeah, that's cool. You could imagine it. You could access it within yourself to be able to like project that.
Do you know who my imaginary dad was?
No.
Joe Rogan.
What? No way. Are you serious?
Joe Rogan. Then the psychologist who came up with it, who I'm forgetting my dad's name. Hey, what's his name? I don't remember.
Interesting.
Or Tony Robbins as well.
Really?
Like,
interesting.
I guess like masculine men.
Interesting.
Or men I can like respect in some way.
Like they're protective?
Yeah.
Like they're very protective.
Like I wouldn't choose like an artistic father.
Why?
An imaginary father.
Why?
Like I can't imagine myself choosing like, oh, Mick Jagger. Okay, like Mick Jagger will be my imaginary
Why
father.
do you think that is?
I don't know.
Because you seem artistic.
I know, I do.
But you like...
But like
okay.
my imaginary fathers, I want them to be a certain way. And for my mother, do you want to... one of my imaginary mothers is Oprah.
Interesting.
So Joe Rogan and Oprah. And actually, I would match certain imaginary parents with... So I think... Yeah, no. Oprah was always with the psychologist guy that invented this technique.
Okay.
God, what's his name? Yeah. He was always paired with Oprah. Tony with his wife. Tony Robbins with his wife.
Interesting.
Sage,
okay.
And Joe Rogan with my first therapist.
Interesting. I like how you paired them too. You made them actually be. That's one way to do the.
But that's the whole thing. Like supposedly it treats attachment.
Interesting. Issues. So interesting. It makes me think. I'm like, who's my
Who would you want to be an imaginary father?
I think I already, I'm not gonna say it just in case this is but I think I've met people in real life where I'm like, oh, like.
You could be my father.
Yeah, I had a teacher in high school, and he was just like the sweetest guy ever. He was just like so kind. Like everybody knew him, and oh no, is it off?
Yeah.
But it's still going.
But
Yeah.
We're still getting.
Okay, so he was like super sweet. It was to the point where like everyone had a day for him because he would smile so much. Like not in a weird way. It was just like very like genuine and kind. And he was just so like I don't know, caring and
Let's just put the mic. We'll I'll hold it here.
okay.
So you get both of us.
Okay. So he was just so like caring and like sweet. I don't know, his just presence was very both safe and kind, I think. And I always like, I would always go show my write, because I would write a lot. I would show my writings to him, and he was always like curious and supportive. And just, I remember feeling super, like I wasn't the type to interact with teachers a whole lot, but I would always be open to going and like asking him questions and, you know, getting support from him and everything. And I think he really helped me have a good like experience in high school, and like be curious about my capabilities. Like, oh, like I can do these things. So I've
encouraged development.
Develop. So yeah, like I think I've had teachers and professors that are just really kind and like they really care, and I think that's really been not many, maybe like Michelle Obama. I like.
She seems motherly. Yeah.
She seems both like very strong, but also more as like a person to aspire to be like, more than like I think motherly. Of like, she seems very like she's kind and has morals and like, but she's also strong and like she can like stand by her values and.
Well, those are not actually, they're the same thing.
Yeah, that's true, because it's like we think like, oh, to be strong, sometimes people think it means to be like callous in some way, but you could be strong and you can be kind too, so
Okay, I think that's good.
okay,
Well, thank you for talking. Oh, before you drink your vampire juice, thank you.
okay.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Cool. Time kind of flew.
Yeah, it felt like we were legit like doing like a.
It was so natural too.
Yeah.
We were really good.
Oh, thanks. You too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could talk about this stuff for a long time.
Same.
So, yeah.
I could keep going.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
We got. Oh, let me stop recording.